Welcome to Too Fond of Books. My name is Janelle and this is a reading roundup. In my reading roundup videos, I talk about the books that I've read recently. I kind of do a bit of a review of them and whether or not I liked them. And so I'm going to start this time. I'm going to start with, I've read a few books for advanced reader copies for NetGalley. So I'm going to start with those. I read Death at High Tide by Hannah Dennison. I've read a number of her books. She's got a few series that I enjoy, and so this is the first in what she's calling the Island Sisters Mysteries. And this book is now out from St. Martin's Press. And this is a modern day mystery set on an island just off the coast of Cornwall. And so I absolutely love the setting for this book. It felt very gothic and atmospheric. This book was written in the first person. Main character is Evie and her sister Margot. Newly widowed Evie and her sister Margot are taking a weekend holiday on a small island off the coast of Cornwall. Evie discovers the body of the owner at the bottom of the cliff. And so, of course, they're investigating. It's an isolated, closed circle mystery because it's on an island and there are limited people on that island. There were some great descriptions to get there. They had to take a ferry from the mainland to a bigger island and then a sea tractor from that island over to the little island that this hotel is on. And I love that description of the sea tractor. Yeah, so it's just very atmospheric. So it's a small little island with a very few number of people on it. And Jago is the owner of the hotel on the island, and he is found at the bottom of the cliff. And so the police get called in from the larger island to investigate. I love the description of the hotel because it's this great old building, but the decor seems to be stuck in the 1970s, which is, I mean, the minute she wrote that, I knew exactly what it looked like, you know? But the rooms are named after novelists from the Golden Age, which I loved that. So, like, there was an Agatha Christie room and a Marjorie Allingham and all of that. There's also a collection of first editions from the 20s and 30s, because back then, when the hotel was running in the 20s and 30s, they had a lot of writers come and stay, and they had writers' weekends and stuff. And so all of that made me think, this is a hotel that I would love to stay at. Except for the fact that everyone who lives or works at this hotel is mysterious and a little bit scary. The book was fast-paced and atmospheric. It was with an almost gothic location, some really interesting characters. I really enjoyed it. I would definitely read more in the series, and I gave it 4 stars. The next book that I read as an advanced reader copy was Murder at the Natural History Museum by Jim Eldridge. This is also now out by Allison and Busby. This is the latest in his Museum Mysteries series, and I've read most of that series. So it's a historical mystery, which I love, and I love that he sets them in museums. I think that is so fascinating. And so for this book, it's at the Natural History Museum in London. It is 1895, and Daniel Wilson and Abigail Fenton are asked to investigate vandalism in the new dinosaur exhibit at the museum. And then one of the museum staff is found dead. So I love that they're set in museums, and Daniel and Abigail are a really interesting pair of investigators. Daniel is an ex police officer. He worked with Aberline on the Ripper case, and Abigail is an archaeologist, an Egyptologist. She's a really smart woman. Ahead of her time, though. I mean, she struggles because women didn't have the vote yet and didn't necessarily get a lot of respect in those kind of scientific positions. So the two of them make a great investigative team, and yeah, it was a good solid mystery. I gave it 4 stars. And then the last advanced reader copy that I read was called The Nidderdale Murders by J.R. Ellis. This is also now out from Amazon Publishing UK, and this is a modern day mystery set in Yorkshire, and I really liked this story. So grouse moor owner and retired judge Alexander Fraser is shot outside the village pub, and DCI Oldroyd and his team are called in to investigate. And they have a witness who says that she saw the shooting from her window in the hotel. She works at the hotel. And she saw this person come up and shoot Alexander, and he looked at her. So she says that she knew who it was. And so I thought that was fascinating, because I thought, what kind of a mystery are we going to get when we apparently know who the killer is? But it was really good. It was a well-crafted mystery with a wonderful sense of place. You could tell that the author has an obvious love of the Yorkshire Dales, which is where the story is set. The plot was complex with plenty of suspects and clues and red herrings, and the characters were well drawn and interesting. There's parts of it you might have a little bit of a hard time going along with, but the rest of it was so solid that I was okay with that. I was like, yeah, I'm along for the ride. I can suspend my disbelief. So yeah, this was a good solid 4 stars. I really enjoyed it, and I would definitely read more from that author. All right, now getting into the physical copies of books that I've read recently. Most of these are from the library. I read The Stolen Gold Affair by Bill Pronzini. This is his latest in his Carpenter and Quincannon mystery series. This is a historical mystery series set in California in the late 1800s. And these are just really good, solid, entertaining mysteries. Sabina Carpenter and John Quincannon are private investigators. They are partners with really interesting histories. John Quincannon used to work for the Secret Service, and Sabina, she used to work for the Pinkertons. So that was really interesting. And the books always generally include really interesting historical detail and pieces of history. And so in this one, John gets asked to go undercover at a gold mine because the owners are fairly certain that someone is stealing gold dust from the mine. And so he goes undercover as a miner. So there's great description of the mining camps and what it's like to go underground and mine for gold. I found that part really interesting, and I gave it 4 stars. And then I read Masquerade at Middlecrest Abbey by Abigail Wilson. This is, I think it's primarily marketed as a Regency romance, and it definitely is, but there's a good amount of mystery in it. And I have to say, I loved this book. I gave it 5 stars. This is exactly the kind of Regency romance that I like. And so, I've never read anything else by Abigail Wilson, and this is her newest. This came out this year. And so it's set in the Regency time period, which I love. There are highwaymen and spies related to the war in France, and codes and ciphers that need to be decoded, and there's disguises and shenanigans and murder. It was so good. I loved it so much. And so I want to read the opening because it's so great. 1815, southeastern England. I blinked a few times and took a deep breath. Apparently, I'd survived. Shaky, I pressed my hand to the wet gash on my temple as the world around me swirled into focus. Gunshots, highwaymen, the carriage crashing to its side. The whole awful encounter raced through my mind like a runaway horse. So she wakes up. The carriage has been in an accident. The main character, I've totally just forgotten her name for a second. Elizabeth. She is in a carriage with her young son, who is about 11 months old, and they get pulled out over by a highwayman, and there's an accident, and she wakes up, and this highwayman is trying to save her and her son from the overturned carriage. And I don't want to say too much more. I don't want to ruin the story for you, but it turns out that she has to marry this so-called highwayman, and the story goes from there. And it was just so good. And I read something, an interview with the author, and she talked about her literary influences and the books that she read when she was younger. And unsurprisingly, it was Jane Austen, right? Georgette Heyer, Daphne du Maurier, Mary Stuart. And that's all you need to know what kind of book this is. It was so good. I definitely want to buy this book, and I definitely want to read more from the author. It was just a really fun ride. And the romance part in it was good. It didn't overtake the plot, which for me is important. And it was a clean romance, which I loved. And so yeah, I can't say enough about how much I really loved this book. And then I read Death and the Redheaded Woman by Loretta Ross. This is a book that I picked up for free at our library pop-up sale, and I thought that I would read it before I put it in our little free library. And as it turns out, this was not the book for me. I gave it 2 stars. It was a mystery that was okay. There was stolen jewels, and that part of it was okay, but everybody had the same sense of humor in the book, and so therefore could tease each other the same way, which I didn't find very realistic. And also there was so much sexual humor, which I didn't go for. And the main character, when she meets the other main character, this guy, the very first thing he says to her when they meet is so totally inappropriate. Like, I didn't get it at all. So no, this was not the book for me. However, it brought up an interesting discussion question. So let's have a discussion about this in the comment section down below. When you look at this cover, if all you had was this cover, what would you say this book was? What type of book would this be? Just from the cover. When I looked at this, I totally thought that it was a cozy mystery. And so as I read it, and when I read it and I realized that it was not a cozy mystery, that's what got me to this discussion question. And that is, how much does our expectation of a book play into our ultimate enjoyment of that book? Because when I read this book, I was expecting a cozy. And when you expect a cozy, there's certain things you expect in the book. And what I got was a lot of sexual humor, sex, and violence. And I was not expecting that because I thought I was reading a cozy. And I think that if I wasn't expecting a cozy, I may have enjoyed this book a little bit more because I would have been prepared for, I think, the violence and the sex and all of that. And so that's what I would like to hear about in the discussion down in the in the comment section below, is how much do you think that your expectations of a book affects your ultimate enjoyment of that book? Because I was expecting a cozy. So first of all, tell me in the comment section, what do you see when you see this cover? Because I want to know if it's just me or not. And then also let me know, what do you think? Does what you expect from a book affect how much you ultimately enjoy that book? And then the last book that I read, and I just finished this yesterday, was The Silent Wife by Karin Slaughter. This is her newest book, and this is in the Will Trent series. I loved this book. It was so good. I love Karin Slaughter. I think she is a phenomenal writer. She writes such great stories, great mysteries, and great characters. And I love that she has combined her two series. So she initially had her Grant County series with Sarah Linton, who was married to the chief of police Jeffrey Tolliver, and then they got divorced, and then they got remarried, and then he got killed, and so she's now a widow and has moved to Atlanta. And then she also was writing the Will Trent series, and Will Trent is a officer in the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, and a few books ago he and Sarah met and are together, and so she has now managed to combine those two series, which I think is great. And so what she's managed to do because of that is to bring in all of the great characters from both series all together into one series, and I really do like that. So in this one, Will Trent and the team that he works for get called into a prison. There has been a riot, but one of the prisoners is found dead. So they get called in to investigate that. And while they're there, another prisoner wants to talk to them. And he says that he believes that he has been framed, that he did not do what people say that he did, although it gets complicated because he is not in jail for that. He is in jail for other things, but he wants them to investigate this other thing, and if they do, he will give them information about, there's this massive ring of people bringing in cell phones into the prison, which is a huge problem, and he can give them some good information. And so, but only if they investigate this crime that he says that he was framed for. And he believed that he was framed by Jeffrey Tolliver from Grant County. And so, of course, this causes a lot of problems because Will and the other people on his team, they know Sarah, and they know that that's going to cause a problem. So there's some dual timelines because she also goes back and tells the story of the crime that this guy was that everyone thought this guy had committed at the time, and then the current day investigation. And it was so good. I gave this 5 stars. I really, really enjoyed it. Karin Slaughter is not afraid of violence and hard things. She will write about these things. And but the reason why I'm okay with reading it, I don't tend to like a lot of violence, but it never feels gratuitous with her books, and she tends to highlight issues that are important. So like violence against women, for example, in this book, and the effects of that on women and their families is really highlighted in this book. And so I just really enjoyed this. And yeah, I mean, I tend to, if Karin Slaughter puts out a book, I'll read it. So yeah, that is what I've been reading recently. Have you read any of these books? I would love to hear what you thought of them in the comment section down below. Also, do any of these books look interesting to you? I'd like to hear about that as well. Or let's talk about anything you want to talk about, especially related to books. And I'll see you for another video soon. Bye.